In this video, I want to look at section 70D and 70E in the Prentice Hall Reference Guide. So what I want to look at first is the paper format quick guide for MLA. This handy chart tells you pretty much everything you need to know about how to set up your paper and make it look the way that it's supposed to look. It talks about margins, spacing, indentation, the title and personal information, header and page numbers, tables and figures, headings and subheadings, figures and works cited. Okay, so very, very handy. I recommend that you consult that when you're setting up the first draft of your first essay. In the next section, we have a sample MLA style research paper. Now, it's handy to look at this research paper because it gives you an idea of how everything actually visually appears on the page. So when you set up all the stuff at the top of the page, you want to make sure that you've included everything. Now, I do have some information on momentum that tells you how to set all this up. It gives you instructions for how to do that if you're using Microsoft Word. But I also ask that you add a couple of additional pieces of information. For example, the third line down in which you are supposed to list the course, I also ask you to list the paper and the draft number of that paper. Then below the date, notice that the date is inverted. You have the day and then the month and then the year. But excuse me, below the date, I want you to add the word count because I want to make sure that you know exactly what your word count is. Okay, it's very important that you're aware of that. Because if you're not aware of it, you might turn in a paper with the wrong word count, okay? Excuse me. So these two sections are really important. You can flip over and look at the rest of this research paper if you want, just as a guide for how people set up research papers. But when we get closer to writing the research paper, I will be giving you more information, and I will probably be giving you some ideas that might contrast with some of the examples that you see here. But nevertheless, this is a great example of how everything should look on the page if you include the additional information that I have just told you about. Notice that everything is double spaced, so you will have to make sure that you go into the paragraph formatting in Word and set this up to be double spaced. You also will want to make sure that you get rid of any extra spacing that Microsoft Word likes to throw in there. So typically by default, Microsoft Word adds in, I think it's either 0.08 or 0.8 extra spacing between the lines. So you will have to go in there and make sure that you get rid of any extra spacing and just make sure that it's purely double spaced.